Okay, so today we are diving into the fascinating world of infodynamics. You know how we're always just like swimming in information these days? News, social media, all this stuff, podcasts, it just doesn't end.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and that's where this whole idea of infodynamics comes in. Like, we're going to unpack how information is so much more than just, these data points. It's actually like a force, right? This driving force behind everything from just like the small decisions you make day to day to how the entire universe operates. And to guide us on this totally mind-bending journey, we're going deep into the work of Klaus Jaffe and his book, Infodynamics.
Yeah, Jeff's work is really cool because he helps us understand that the real key to harnessing this force of information is recognizing that there's a difference between just information and useful information.
Okay, so it's not just about the quantity, it's like the quality of the information.
You got it. It's like this. Think about it. You could have an entire library, right, full of books, but if none of them have like the specific information that you need to solve a problem or achieve some goal you have, they're not really useful to you in that moment.
It's like having a million random puzzle pieces, but no picture to put them together, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Jaffa argues that this useful information is directly tied to like energy, our ability to do work, to like create change in the world. He even has an equation for it. Useful energy is proportional to useful information. So that means more useful information equals more potential energy,
Yeah.
and therefore more potential to make things happen.
So, like, if I'm trying to find the best route to avoid traffic, my phone using GPS data, that's a great example of useful information because it's leading to a desired outcome for me.
Yes, precisely. And just like that GPS data helps your phone guide you more efficiently, useful information, in a broader sense, is what guides energy to create order and complexity to drive progress. And this is happening at every level, from the smallest cells to entire societies.
Whoa, okay. This is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started. Now, I know Jeff's work covers a ton of different fields.
It does. It's everywhere. And I think that's one of the things that makes infodynamics so fascinating. You see it everywhere.
So let's talk about some specific examples then. Where do we see this idea of useful information actually, like, playing out?
Okay, well, we can start with a classic thought experiment from physics called Maxwell's demon. Imagine a little demon controlling a gate between two chambers of gas. The demon can use information about the speed of individual molecules to only let the fast ones through to one side and the slow ones to the other. This would create a temperature difference, which seems to defy the second law of thermodynamics, which is kind of crazy.
Wait, so just by having information, this demon can actually influence energy and create order.
Exactly. Of course, it's just a thought experiment, but it just highlights how valuable information is. And just like that demon needs information to sort those molecules, you need the right information to make good decisions and achieve your goals.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful image. What about in nature? How does this infodynamics work in biology?
Well, just think about DNA, right? It's essentially a blueprint, and it's packed with this useful information that guides the entire process of building and running a living organism.
So biology is using information to quite literally build life itself?
It's that fundamental.
Hmm.
But it's not just on a microscopic level, right? Jaffa also argues that these larger systems, like societies and economies, can be viewed through this lens of infodynamics as well.
So how does that work? Does a society that has like more access to information just automatically do better?
That's where things get even more interesting. Because Jaffe's research suggests that it's not just about having more information, it's about having the right kind of information and structuring it in a way that allows for efficient action. One example he gives is constitutions. Research shows that these really long constitutions, especially ones that are just filled with what he calls populist language, are correlated with less effective governance and lower socioeconomic indicators.
Wait, so more information in that case actually led to less useful energy, less positive change for those societies?
It seems that way, yeah. It's like all this excess, poorly structured information created a system that struggled to translate that information into effective action. It's like trying to bake a cake with a recipe that has a million steps and contradicts itself constantly. You're probably going to end up with a mess.
So it's not just about the amount of information, but how we organize and use it.
Exactly. And that's a really key takeaway here. The true potential of information, I think, is realized when it's structured effectively and channeled towards a purpose.
That is powerful. So we've gone from tiny molecules to entire societies all through this lens of infodynamics. It's clear this idea has huge implications for how we understand the world around us.
Absolutely. And it gets even more mind-blowing when we start looking at how infodynamics plays out in the evolution of life itself.
It really is mind-boggling to think about how life on Earth went from these like single-celled organisms to this just incredible diversity we see today. It's like life itself just like cracked the code of information, to create something truly remarkable.
Yeah. And it's even more amazing when you think about the fact that this incredible increase in complexity, it seems to go against this natural tendency toward disorder, toward entropy.
Right, like life found a loophole in the laws of physics, a way to like not just resist disorder, but actually become more organized, more complex over time.
I love that, a loophole. And Jaffe argues that the key to this loophole, to this incredible feat, is evolution. He sees evolution as like a natural Maxwell's demon, constantly selecting for these organisms that are just better at utilizing information.
Okay, yeah, Maxwell's demon, our little information gathering gatekeeper from earlier. So you're saying evolution is like this master information filter, just picking and choosing which information gets passed on.
Exactly. The organisms that are better at extracting useful information from their environment, right? Like at turning that information into energy and action. Those are the ones that thrive, the ones that reproduce, and their genes, which carry that valuable information, get passed on to future generations.
So the drive to survive and reproduce, it's essentially this drive to gather and use information effectively. Like it's this constant competition to see who can make the most of the information that's available.
Precisely. But then where does all this new information come from in the first place? That's where things get really, really interesting. Jaffe points to sex as this major player in this whole information game.
Wait, sex, like romantic love, birds singing, all that. What does that have to do with information?
Okay, think about it this way. Sexual reproduction, it involves combining genetic information from two individuals. Right. It's like shuffling two decks of cards together. You create a brand new hand with each generation. And this mixing, this shuffling, it creates offspring with these unique combinations of genes, some of which might give them an advantage in this game of survival.
Oh, wow. So sex is basically nature's way of running this giant experiment. It's like constantly testing new combinations of information to see what works best.
You got it. And Jaffe takes this idea even further with his simulations, right? These simulations actually model this evolutionary process, and they've revealed some pretty amazing insights.
Like what? Give me the highlights.
Okay, so for one, they highlight the importance of this thing called diploidy. So most organisms you see, they have two copies of each gene, one from each parent.
So it's like having a backup copy of all your important files just in case one gets corrupted or something.
Exactly. Diploidy, it provides this buffer against harmful mutations and helps preserve all that useful information over generations. And here's the even wilder part. His simulations also show that having two distinct sexes, male and female, this appears to be incredibly effective when it comes to creating and maintaining useful information within a species.
Okay, now I have to ask, why two sexes? Why not three or four? Or even more? Wouldn't that create even more variation, more opportunities for evolution to play with?
That's a great question, and it's something that Jaffe explores in his work. But his simulations, they actually suggest that having two sexes, especially when combined with the division of labor between those sexes, it creates this really powerful synergistic effect.
Hold on, synergy. Remind me what that means again.
Right, so synergy is when the combined effect of two things working together, it's greater than the sum of their individual parts. It's that whole 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing.
Oh.
And this division of labor between sexes is a key part of that equation.
Okay, so I'm following you so far, but how does that actually work with males and females?
Well, think about the difference between sperm and eggs, right? Sperm are tiny and mobile. They're optimized for just finding an egg. Eggs are much larger, packed with nutrients. They're ready to nourish a developing embryo. So the specialization, this difference in form and function, it allows for much more efficient use of energy and resources, which ultimately leads to more successful offspring.
So it's not just about creating more and more variation. It's about creating variation that's actually useful, that actually increases the chances of survival and reproduction.
You got it. And this is where Jaffe's work gets really, really exciting because he suggests that these principles that we see in biological evolution, this whole interplay of information, energy, and yes, even sex, They might also offer insights into the evolution of human societies and ideas.
You're saying our cultures, our technologies, even our beliefs, they're evolving through this kind of information-driven selection process, kind of similar to what happens in nature.
In a way, yes. We're constantly exchanging information, we're combining ideas, and we're selecting for the ones that just seem to be the most fit for our cultural environment at that time.
So ideas that resonate, ideas that solve problems, that really capture our imaginations, those are more likely to spread and take hold, just like those beneficial genes in the natural world.
Exactly. But of course, it's really important to remember that human evolution is so much more complex than simple biological evolution. We have language, culture, technology, all these things that influence how we create, how we share, and ultimately how we select information. But these underlying principles of infodynamics, this really intricate dance of information and energy, it might still offer this very powerful framework for understanding just how our societies change and adapt over time.
This makes me think about the rapid spread of information and misinformation online. It's like we're all part of this massive information ecosystem, just constantly exchanging these ideas, for better or for worse.
And that's precisely why understanding these ideas, this infodynamics, is so crucial, especially now. It's not just about marveling at the elegance of information's role in this natural world. It's about recognizing how these same principles shape our own lives, our social structures, and ultimately the future that we are creating.
Okay, so we've gone from the origins of life to the evolution of human societies, and it's clear that infodynamics is this incredibly powerful force that's shaping the world around us. But I'm curious, how does this all connect to our everyday lives? How does infodynamics actually play out on a more practical level? You know, when we talk about information shaping societies, it's easy to think of books or the internet or all these sources of data.
Right.
But what about the actual structure of our societies themselves? Could that be a form of information too?
That's a really interesting question. And it is something that Jaffe addresses directly in his work.
Okay.
He argues that the way we organize ourselves, like the very systems and structures that we create, they embody a kind of information that shapes how effectively we function.
So it's not just about the information we share, but it's how we're connected, how we work together.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of the most fascinating examples Jaffe uses to illustrate this is the ant colony.
Ants. Really?
Oh.
What can ants possibly teach us about information and society?
You might be surprised.
Yeah.
Ant colonies, despite their tiny inhabitants, are incredibly complex and efficient systems.
Yeah.
They have these specialized roles, communication networks. They even have these intricate architectural structures.
Right.
And all of this, Jaffe argues, is a form of information that allows them to thrive.
Okay. I can see that having specific tunnels for carrying food or, designated areas for the queen to lay eggs.
Right.
It's their entire environment is a blueprint for how to be an efficient ant colony.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting, because Jaffe draws this direct parallel between ant colonies and our own cities.
Okay.
He sees both as examples of these complex systems that rely on information to achieve what's called synergy.
Synergy. We talked about that earlier with sexual reproduction.
Yes.
It's the 1 + 1 = 3.
That's right. It's the whole being greater than the sum of its parts.
Right.
And in the context of cities, synergy means that by organizing ourselves efficiently, by specializing and collaborating, we can actually achieve far more than if we all operated independently.
So just like those ants with their specialized roles, our cities thrive when people specialize in different professions and then work together.
Exactly. Think about it. A doctor, an engineer, an artist, they each have these specialized knowledge and skills.
Right.
But by working together, by sharing information and coordinating their efforts, they could achieve incredible things. Like building hospitals, designing life-saving technologies, or even creating art that inspires and uplifts.
Right, and they couldn't do that if they all tried to do everything themselves.
Exactly. They would be less efficient, less specialized.
Right.
And Jaffe points out that this principle of synergy, driven by information and specialization, is reflected in a surprising way.
Mm.
Larger, denser cities tend to be more energy efficient than smaller, more spread out communities.
Wait, really? So bigger is actually better, at least when it comes to energy use.
It is. It seems counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But when you think about it through the lens of infodynamics, it starts to make sense. Larger cities allow for a greater diversity of skills, knowledge, and resources to be concentrated in a smaller area.
Okay.
And this concentration, facilitated by information networks, infrastructure, social structures, all of that, it leads to a more efficient use of resources and energy overall.
So it's not just about the number of people, it's about how they're organized, how they connect and collaborate.
Exactly. It's about creating systems that maximize the potential of the information available, whether that's in an ant colony, a city, or even, as we talked about earlier, in our own lives.
This is all connecting back so beautifully. We've gone from tiny ants to bustling cities all through this lens of information as this driving force.
It's amazing.
It's clear that understanding these principles can offer us a whole new way of thinking about how the world works.
It really is a powerful framework. And what's so exciting is that it's not just about appreciating the elegance of these systems, right? It's about recognizing that you as an individual, you play this crucial role in this information-driven world.
So how can we use this knowledge, this understanding of infodynamics to make better decisions and navigate what seems like this increasingly complex world? What's the takeaway for our listener today?
I think the most important takeaway is this. Be mindful of the information that you consume, how you process it, and then how you share it with others. Be curious, be discerning, and be open to new ideas and perspectives. Because in a world that is just swimming in information, the ability to navigate that information effectively, to separate what's useful from all the noise, that's an incredibly valuable skill. And who knows, you might even find ways to use information to create a little bit more synergy in your own life and in the world around you.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us into this amazing world of infodynamics. We've explored how information shapes everything from the cells in your body to these vast networks of human civilization. As you go about your day, I just encourage you to keep an eye out for how information, both big and small, is shaping your own experiences. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.